talk a lot about that. All right, is everybody on mute? From the volume down.
We are live. We are waiting for the district to fix a technology issue.
All right, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Hold on. Make sure I have my volume up. Laura, can you turn your volume up?
I am not logging in, so I'm logged in.
Julie, can you turn your volume up? Okay, you ready? Go ahead. I can't hear you at all.
That would be because I didn't press unmute.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So we were going to work off the merged proposal that I sent over to Laura and to your team. Again, what I did was I took the district initial proposal and the PEA initial proposal from the August 10th meeting. And what I did was I put them together based on kind of like similar language and like face coverings or screenings, and kind of grouped language together so it wasn't all over the place. And then I also referenced where I got the language from. So in red at the end of each section, it says like district office, safety and protocols, or PEA health and safety. So we could see where all the language initially came from. And that's kind of why it's so big too. It will slim down a little bit because some of this has both languages that we haven't necessarily agreed to yet that need some more discussion. So we were thinking that we should probably start on page 10 with the campus eSchool model, and then following right after that with the blended learning model to get those hashed out. at least today, and maybe come to a tentative agreement on that, and then work, from the front end there. Those seem to our side, seem to be the most pressing pieces as master schedules are being finalized, and, Monday is rolling up really quick. So does that sound good with your side to start there? Okay. All right. So, okay, perfect. So we're on page 10, Laura. And it's kind of it's toward the bottom of page 10 where we're starting. Now, what I did was I tried to color code so that district language is in green and PEA language is in blue. And that just means that either we haven't really talked about it in depth yet and we need to discuss it, or we have some disagreements that we need to come to some unanimity with, to make it easier to follow with. And if I didn't highlight it, from the notes that I took on August 10th and from the notes that I read over from Laura, it sounded like we had unanimity. And so we want to go back and look at that language just to make sure. But in comparison with my notes and Laura's notes, it seemed like we had some unanimity on language that wasn't highlighted. And so with campus e-school model, which is number 5 on page 10, we wanted to bring forth class size caps. And so that class size for campus e-school will be maintained at district averages from the 1920 school year. Because these are not typical, like Florida virtual classes. We are expecting teachers to go on that structured bell schedule. They're going to be grading assignments just like they would if face-to-face. And so we can't overload their class sizes just because they happen to be virtual. Because you're essentially, you're adding to their workload. And so we felt it was fair to keep campus e-school classes at the district's district averages from last year.
Can someone turn their... All right, better? Oh, no, not yet. I think we're good now. All right. Stephanie, I'm looking at some different things in regards to district averages versus the school class size average. I would just like us to consider the school class size average because I think it takes into account some of the different nuances that we see from school to school based on school size, overall, school structures. So that was, I know we have previously talked about this, but rather than being the district average, I think we should just look at class sizes for campus e-school will be maintained at school averages. So that was going to be my recommendation. You're on mute, Stephanie. Stephanie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. I should, since I'm by myself, I should just leave it off of mute, I think, so I don't run into that problem. Anyway, we're okay with going school averages as long as there are class caps. And so if it's a school-wide average, we're okay with having that in place. And I know numbers are still being balanced out just like they always are at this time of year. And so I know even to start school, you may start with 40, but it balances out. But we want to make sure we have a mechanism in place so that it does eventually balance out, even in our e-school classes. So okay. So Laura, we're changing it from district to school average. Okay. And so do we want to keep the 1920 school year, or are we just looking at school class size averages now?
I don't think we have to specify a year. I think we could just end after the word averages.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so then we're good with A? All right. And so the rest of the language is pretty much from our proposal. Did you guys have any questions or ones that you wanted to discuss from our bullet points here?
So B, C, D are all covered in the ICP.
Okay.
So that's all aligned with what is in the ICP as well.
Okay, so we're good with A, B, and C, and D now.
Yes.
Okay.
5 on page 11 of 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, B is covered with the technology agreement that students signed off on.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's in the ICP, so I don't know if we also need it here, or I think that's the question.
Well, if it's covered in the ICP, I think it's when people are reading the MOU agreement that it's beneficial to have it in here as well. Are there any other questions on E through J? Or anything that you needed to bring up with us? Or are we good with that?
Hold on for 1 second.
Okay, no problem. And I did, just before we get too far, we are streaming this again, just so you guys know. Okay.
3 more seconds, sorry.
Okay, no problem.
You want to mute?
No, I'm good.
No, I was talking to Michelle. I'm hearing feedback. Speakers off. Okay. So one of the things we're looking at is during instructional time C. I think Michelle misspoke earlier, but during instructional time, during online learning in the classroom, there will be a certified teacher in the classroom. What do you mean? Explain that a bit more.
So,
Because, I mean, right now, as you know, that is not necessarily, I think, feasible.
so explain why wouldn't it be, like, are you talking about
You're
with
muted.
subs? I'm not muted.
Oh. You turned up? Go ahead.
Are you talking about like with a sub situation?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, I guess, overall.
So I
During
guess
instructional time.
what we're saying is that support staff wouldn't be in their teaching classes or assigned by themselves to teach a class in each school on a regular basis. Now, we know if a para is having to subs are different. Subs are under Kelly Services or our para educators per their CBA are used to sub in the case of an emergency. But that a para educator or support staff would not be like the adult in the room on a regular basis. That's the thinking behind that point.
So I don't know that that says that. It just says during instructional time, plain language,
Mm-hmm.
including during online learning in the classroom. Are you talking about the e-classroom or the live classroom?
Well, so to make it clearer, then would we want to say that no support
I want them to
personnel
say it, John.
will be assigned to a group of students for a prolonged period of time, or prolonged probably needs to be specified? Because that's the intent, is that we didn't want para educators or even support staff assigned to classrooms on a regular basis, or like that was their classroom and without a certified teacher in place.
You mean proctoring or teaching?
Like teaching, like in their long term, almost like a sub. But you know, long-term subs are different, right? Long-term subs have, if you're coming in for an FMLA or anything like that, you have to have at least have a bachelor's degree, right? And so we did not want our support staff to be put in a bad position to where they were just assigned a group of children without a certified teacher in the room.
So I think this doesn't say that at all. So I'll wholly reject C, or we are wholly rejecting C. And if you want to rewrite it or propose it again, that's fine. But that doesn't say that at all.
Well, do we want to write something now that would be amiable to both sides so that we can check this off and move on?
So for me, we don't do that. And I guess maybe I'm looking at the principals right now. Paras aren't in classrooms long-term, nor are ESP in classrooms long-term. So to be frank, it's a non-issue. We have subs come in classrooms long-term. And so I personally don't want to write anything. If you want to re-propose it, you can, but we don't agree to C at all.
So how about during e-learning, face-to-face, or blended learning, there will be a certified teacher as the instructor?
Or a sub.
Well, I mean, that's our protocol anyway. So I'm okay with adding in if
But
there's a sub.
that's a non-issue though. I think that's it. So what I'm getting at is that this language is already a given. It's a
So can I-
standard. You have a certified teacher in there. And you have a sub in there. We are teachers, we're instructors, we're an educational system. So to restate, I guess, the known of having a certified teacher in the classroom and or a sub in the classroom seems unnecessary.
Well, I think what we're trying to get at here is that we're not in a normal year, and we don't want, because there ends up being a shortage throughout the year, that we didn't want this to become an issue. And so we were addressing it in this COVID situation, whereas this does happen normally. There are a lot of things going on right now that don't normally happen. And so we wanted to address that here in the MOU so that it doesn't become an issue.
So are you planning to have classes where the teacher is in the computer, for lack of, let's say it that way, is coming in via computer, and you have only a para in the room keeping order for the children? Did Tedra freeze?
You froze on our end.
So the question I was asking is, do you have the intention of having a teacher come in via computer with only a para or two in the classroom to maintain, I guess the term you used was proctoring?
Yes, that is correct. So that's what we sent in our MOU, is that we can pull non-instructional staff to provide proctoring for the day, much like, and I think we discussed this in previous bargaining sessions, much like we did for when we have testing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing, would that be a prolonged assignment for them, for the support staff?
It could be.
So I know a lot of our paraeducators, especially at the secondary level, provide ESE accommodation services. If they're assigned to proctor, what happens to their primary function? And how are we supporting those students with disabilities if they are now being pulled into a proctoring situation?
So if I may just be frank, a lot of our ESE paras have decided to do e-learning, unfortunately. And so that's a question that the district has overall. Not only that, a lot of our ESE teachers have decided to do e-learning as well. And so that does leave a gap between what happens when a student does truly need ESE services. So it's just something that we're going to have to work through and work with. Number one. Number two is, I think the majority of our principals will be very respectful of the schedules. The majority, if not all, know that a student's ESE minutes are dictated by the IEP, and therefore that would be a federal lawsuit via IDEA if they were not provided the instructional minutes or accommodations that they need. But again, that doesn't speak to C at all.
Okay, we'll talk with I'll talk with my team. So we'll table C right now, and then we will get back to you so we can continue to move on. So what
if I were
about
to look at, I think Michelle said B and D as well. So B is already in the ICP and D is already in the ICP. Teachers will assign work and grades as they normally would in campus learning, with students adhering to a teacher's grading and late work policies. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just me. I feel like a lot of this is a given, and I understand that we are in a different year, but I think as much consistency as we can keep, we are trying to keep. If that's the case, we really then need to rewrite the entire CBA to include all these things.
Well, and I think
these are things that are just are expected and are given. Students will only be permitted to participate in a live audio or video sessions after the district has secured parent or guardian permission. Again, it's in the ICP. I feel like this is really repetitive and not needed in the MOU. So the MOU is to change things that are different about the CBA. This is not addressed in the CBA, so I don't necessarily believe it should be in our MOU. Additionally, I have a problem with G at the bottom, video content. So this is 5G just for reference. But it says when disciplinary action is being considered, video recording will not be used. We can't guarantee that because just like a student in a classroom may record a teacher using abusive language, watching something that they should not be seeing, and or doing something overall that may be offensive and or inappropriate, we use that student's recording to discipline that teacher. So I cannot say that we won't use a recording, a video recording, to discipline a teacher. I think that that's unreasonable and not fair, specifically to that e-learning teacher when that's what we do with the face-to-face teachers.
Well, but I guess the problem or the issue, maybe not problem, but the issue is that typically we do not have cameras in. I'm not muted. I'm not sure why you can't hear me.
Oh, no.
Okay. We don't have cameras in our traditional brick and mortar classrooms. And so really by the student recording somebody without their knowledge, then that's a separate issue. And so I don't see why this wouldn't be extended to eSchool or our eSchool option, because they shouldn't be recording in the classroom anyway. And that's per Florida statute.
So if the teacher would like to sue the student, then go right ahead. But if we come into content where a teacher is doing something inappropriate or violating the code of professional ethics for teachers, we will use that, and we have to use that to go ahead and discipline them. That has been longstanding, not only here in Polk, that's across the state. You know, many teachers have been fired for using abusive or verbally aggressive language, for, you know, doing all sorts of things. So to say that, that's
So
that's not gonna go
what
through,
if
Stephanie.
what if that sentence is taken out? Are you good with G? So if that last sentence is stricken through?
So in no circumstances will video recordings of bargaining unit employees be used as a part of an evaluation. So you're saying that once a principal goes into Schoology, logs into my classroom, it's not being recorded. They can observe like usual, right? So they still have their observation rights to observe that teacher, then that would be okay.
Yes. This is going back and looking at past recordings,
Right.
and then let's say doing
that. Isn't that already in the CBA?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so we wanted to just make sure that it's all in one place here. And you say that some of this is in the ICP.
Hold on, we're getting our CBA. Hold on.
But okay.
All right, so we're looking at it overall, and I think maybe a better strategy, instead of keeping you all waiting, I think a better strategy would be for you to go through what you believe is okay, and then we come back with counter language, because I don't want to keep you all waiting, and I want to make sure we hear all of your concerns. But in looking at this, Stephanie, page 11 of 18 and 5 as a whole, I think we have some major issues with just the language, mainly because one, it's already in the ICP, and then two, it's already in the CBA. And so we're unsure why this needs to be in here. I think if we have issues with it, you obviously refer people back to obviously the ICP or the CBA. And
So I have
it
a
just
problem
seems
with it
quite
just being in the
repetitive to
ICP.
put it in here just for fluff, to be honest with you.
See, I have
And
a
we
problem with
don't,
it just being in the ICP
when
though,
we
because the
already
ICP can
have it
change.
as a document
See,
in two places or in one of two places.
Tedra, the problem is that the ICP
I
can
can't hear you.
change.
I'm sorry. Oh, I can hear you now. You're
Okay.
on mute.
I don't know why I'm not on mute. I don't know why this keeps happening. But the ICP can change per the district's whim, essentially. And if we have these protections in the MOU that aren't addressed in the CBA, then it protects our employees, because then you just can't change the ICP at whim. I mean, that happened in the fourth quarter, you know, where there were edits made to the ICP about grading, etc. And we didn't have that in a formal MOU. And so things in the ICP that specifically address teaching and working conditions in COVID right now should be in an assigned agreed to MOU. And if we want to add in a reference to the CBA for video recordings and evaluations, we can do that. I'm a little frustrated right now because we've had this language to you guys since August 4th, and the merge proposal was sent last week, or Monday morning, not last week. But that merge proposal language didn't really change. I just merged the two proposals together from August 10th, and your team had received our proposal on August 4th. And so this has been language that you guys have had for 2 weeks now. And so I really feel like we need to have discussion on it, not just me going through and explaining each piece, because I've already kind of done that August 10th. We got through 2/3 of this MOU on August 10th. And so we really need to find out where we still have some disagreements and try to come to some agreements to language, whether we write language now, which is amiable to us, so that we can get an agreement in place. I mean, I know you guys don't want to meet tomorrow because of orientation, and that's fine. But I mean, we need to have something in place, and this can't keep dragging out.
Well, you know, to be honest with you, that's why I suggested the emailing back and forth, because I think a lot of this is language. We can easily do comments on that. And I think we will both understand each party's. That's a common practice, not only in labor relations, but just in negotiations in general, number one. Number two, the ICP cannot change. The ICP has been approved by the state. They provided us with a table of contents. We had to fill out or complete the nuts and bolts of it, and they had to approve it. And so if you want to go on the state's website, they're correct. And it had to be linked to board policy. So we cannot just change it as a whim. I think some of the things that you're saying are as an emergency. Okay, so I don't believe that that is true and or accurate at all. Oh,
it did
change it in the spring just because it was an emergency item, but since that time, the FLDOE has allowed us or mandated that we complete the ICP and provide very specific detail with that. So we cannot change it at a whim.
The problem
and I think this is the other thing that you're suggesting by saying that we're changing it at a whim is that we would do something that would be harmful to teachers. And so I think that is not right. We are not trying to be adversarial with teachers at all. We understand that this is different. We understand that this is new and this is unique. And so just like you want us to understand, we need you to understand. So for us on our side, we don't like 5 at all. Besides, like, we can do the class size model, 5A. But the rest of 5 is exceedingly repetitive. And so it should not be in the MOU at all. John, I think he had something to say, so I'm going to go on mute.
Good afternoon, Stephanie. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
John. Yes, I can.
Okay. I was, obviously, I agree with Tedra, and I think we're all here working together in good faith. And, in looking through it, where there's language that's already established and we've already, whether it's through the ICP or through our existing CBA, I think that would help expedite it when we discuss this. And looking at it now and discussing it as we're talking through it, I think we realize that there's some things that we've already got in place that will work very effectively for both sides. So I think in that vein, I think we can move forward. It's not that we're trying to be difficult or adversarial, but we definitely want to work through this. So, but let's think about utilizing and capitalizing on what already exists.
Well, then I honestly don't see what the issue is then of reiterating working conditions into this MOU that line up with the ICP. I mean, who cares if this is a 10-page document or a 15-page document? A signed MOU agreement is just like contract language, and the ICP is not a signed agreement between the union and management. And I do want to address quickly, emailing back and forth is not negotiating in the sunshine. Yes, you can ask for public records requests to get those emails, but this is an agreement that affects every single person in our bargaining unit. This is not an MOU that has bonus money that's attached to a small group of people or a slight change for a short period of time. Like we're going to be living with this for the foreseeable future, at least through the semester, maybe even through the full school year. And when I have no problem and our team has no problem with sending proposals over and talking preliminary things through, but the actual disagreements and where we need to come to unanimity needs to happen at the table. And that's what we're doing right now. And so, again, I'm a little frustrated because we should be hearing your concerns as a whole, not necessarily going piece by piece. And so you say that you reject all of 5 other than class size. And I'm going to push back a little on that because a lot of this is working conditions. And we need to reiterate. And if we want to reference CBA language for the video content during recordings for observations, I'm okay with that. But for right now, like this all needs to be in one place. And so I'm really confused and frustrated about the pushback here.
So I say this, we're not going to agree to 5B through 5J for the reasons that we've articulated before. And so if you want to go to 6, because I know that we have other things on the table, we can go to 6. But we wholly reject 5B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J.
And your reasoning is that it's in the ICP.
Correct. It's in the ICP and it's already in the CBA. There's no need for us to reiterate that.
Stephanie, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Wilfredo.
Hi, Tedra. This question goes to you. On those items that are on the ICP specifically, if any item in the ICP is violated, what's the process? What's the consequences?
Hi, Wilfredo. If the ICP is violated, then we're at risk as a district of losing the approval of our innovative plan.
What is the consequence of the violation?
Huh? Wilfredo, you broke up.
I'm sorry. What is the consequence to the person that's violating, that committed the violation?
Such as if, like, the grading policy that's in the ICP is also the board approved grading policy. I think that's one of the big differences, is that the ICP of Q4 was an emergency ICP. This new ICP is linked all over the place, entire sections, to specific board approved policies, grading, attendance, privacy, student data, that was outlined by the state. So I think that's one of the big differences that we see. I think even for us and having to link it to our innovative plan, that was one of the clear things, is that some of the relaxed attendance and relaxed grading policies that we experienced in Q4 we're no longer allowed to do in order to maintain our funding at the state level. So that's why they had to be much more aligned, actually not just much more, just totally aligned with our board approved policies.
I appreciate that, and thank you for saying that. I guess my question goes to this. You have an ICP. What happens if someone violates the ICP? I get it that it puts the whole thing at risk, but specifically if you have an individual, just to kind of stick with that violates the ICP, what's the consequence to that individual? A process.
Like, we have grievance procedures in place if contract language is violated, which MOUs fall under contract language. There would not be a grievance procedure in place if principal violates ICP. And I think that's where we're running. That's the conflict that we're trying to get, I think, through, is that's why, and we've referenced CBA language in MOUs before. And so we should be fine to reference, if we want to reference Article 15 in 5G for the video during observations, we're fine with that. We can reference that so they can see the CBA language. But to Wilfredo's point, the ICP is not grievable. Contract language is grievable. And so if we have stuff that's being violated, we have no recourse to grieve an ICP document. Whereas we do have grievance procedures put in place to grieve MOUs in contract language. And that's where the pushback is coming from here. And so if it's in the ICP and you can't just willy-nilly change it, then why shouldn't that be mirrored in an MOU agreement that is grievable if in the event that we do need to go that route?
So I'm looking at other districts' MOUs. Pinellas specifically. Pinellas doesn't mention their ICP. They don't mention anything that's currently in their bargaining unit or in the CBA. So for us, putting it in here is just extra. When we are both sides are already stressed. We already have an inordinate amount going on. We don't need to overly stress any one side. And I think that you just said something that was key to me. At the end of the day, it's almost like a gotcha, right? And so let me put it in a MOU so that I can get them.
No,
it pounce on them when they mess up.
That's not even
and I think that's
the point here.
Maybe that's your heart, and that's fine if it is, but that's not where we're coming from. At the end of the day,
that's not where I'm coming from either,
here.
Tedra.
I'm sorry. Hold on for 1 second. Let me just finish what I'm saying. I just let you finish, regardless of what it is. At the end of the day, we're here trying to do the best we can with what we have. And we're not trying to get our teachers. I know that that's a false narrative out there. We're not trying to do anything harmful to them. We are here to work with them And the majority of our teachers literally have been wonderful coming back to work. And so I understand that you have concerns, Stephanie. My heart to you is talk to us about it. Every time you've told me, or every time you've told Tony, hey, we have an issue, what do? I'll send an email to the regional. The regional will get on with the principal. The regional will then say, taken care of, done, i.e., we just had it with Mrs. Barnes and I think Inwood. Wilfredo emailed me last night. We took care of it. So if you have an issue, take care of it. Don't go through this whole, oh, I got to grieve him process. Let's just work through it and take care of it. That would be what I'm saying.
We all know that contract language and laws in general are not meant for most people. Most people have common sense and common courtesy to follow what needs to be done. We have contract language and we have laws in our society just in general because we do have people that decide not to follow the rules. And so we need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. And so, again, I'm not quite seeing why we're getting the pushback if it's already in the ICP, and that why can't it be in this document? And I'm just not understanding that part. So we will, what we'll do is we will look at these parts in the ICP and match them up. And then maybe we just state that all ICP language as of August 19th will be adhered to per this MOU agreement. So we'll look at that, and then we'll, I guess, have to talk about it again at our next time. So moving on to blended learning. We did a little bit of work here. So if you go on to number 6. We have, after Monday, we looked at the stipend piece, but we also did a survey. And so, Laura, can I share my screen for a minute? And then I'll give the screen back to you. So we had, out of the no's, if they answered no, that they didn't have a blended learning schedule, it bumped them back to the end of the survey. We had 554 people as of now take this survey saying that they had a blended learning
Make it larger
section.
so we can all see.
Yep. Sure thing. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. And so 554 people say that they had some schedule of blended learning, whether it was 1 or 6 or even 7. Out of those class periods or time blocks, most people, 186, have their whole entire day of blended learning. And there's even 56 that are taking on an extra period assignment. And it's all blended learning. So, and we know that not everybody replied to this survey. So it's not exceedingly rare. And then it looks like that 198 of that 554 have stacked class periods to where they have more than one section in one period. And out of that, this is the green, that out of those stacked class periods, 186 of them are all blended learning or some kind of hodgepodge between blended learning and face-to-face or e-school all together. And that's just craziness to have 3 blended learning classes at the same time. I don't know how any one person's supposed to do this. We asked for their work site. In the highlights here, George Jenkins comes in at 54 of their teachers or have some sort of blended learning in their schedule. Where I found it interesting that Ridge Community High School is our largest high school in the county, and they only have 6 blended learning. So it can be done. And Ridge seems to be doing a pretty good job of it. And it seems to, for the most part, be in our high schools. And that's where our specialty electives tend to be housed. And so our high school teachers are drowning. And I know that the narrative from the last meeting was that, you know, teachers are happy to do this. And from our survey, teachers don't seem to be too happy about doing this. We've had one person resign that we talked to yesterday. And I'll get to that number in a minute. Those are all the schools. And then 441 people that answered this survey feel that they do not have adequate technology resources and support to implement blended learning with Fidelity. And then we asked about class size in their blended learning. And so how many of your blended learning classes have more total students during the same class time than listed below? And these are your class size amendment numbers for kindergarten through 3, 4 through 8, and 9 through 12. And so we can see that they're over their class size amendment. And then number 8, how are you feeling with teaching blended learning sections? And if you look at the question for number 8, it goes, sorry, that's number 9. Overwhelmed is 1, to confident is 5. And your average number is pretty close to overwhelmed. And then number 9, how much extra work do you feel you will need to do to prepare and implement instruction for each section of your blended learning class periods and time blocks? It went from no work needed to more than double for each class period. And it's pretty much getting close to 4.2, which is almost more than double of the workload needed per class. And then are blended learning assignments causing you to consider leaving the teaching profession? A little bit more than half. And so that's why we're pushing this issue, because we can't put students first if we continue to put teachers last and not listen to them and either give them more time to do this with Fidelity and give them the resources needed, and listen to them about what they need for this, and continue to make them do more with less. And that's why we're asking for compensation for this, because this is extra work. And anybody that says it's not is kidding themselves when they get into that classroom on Monday. And out of those 283 teachers that said that they had considered leaving the teaching profession because of these work assignments, we can't afford to have 283 teachers leave because of this. Because then you not only can you not offer these programs, you can't keep your teachers here. You can't offer programs. You're not putting students first. And so the whole idea that students are driving, teachers being worked into the ground because of this is going to hurt us in the long run. And that's why we keep wanting to address this with you all, because, teachers will do everything and anything in their power to do things that are good for their kids. They don't come into this because they want to get rich. They don't come into this for any other reason, but they have a heart for kids and a heart for education. But there's a line, and we're crossing that line to where people are just going to leave versus put up with the extra because they feel that it's insurmountable at this point. And so that's why we are really wanting to hammer out this Class E school, the Campus E school, in the blended learning model and have it in an MOU so that we can set parameters for these teachers to hopefully help them put boundaries up so that we don't burn them out and then they don't end up leaving.
So a few things. First, I'm glad you did the survey, so thank you. Number one, hold on, let me make sure my camera is on. So I'm glad you did the survey. I think we actually estimated 10%. So the fact that your survey only got 540 is much less than our 10%. So that's about 8% of the population. And so I'm okay with that. That's okay. That is rare. 8% is not a whole lot compared to, and then to be honest, the 500 and what'd you say, 54. 554 is comparatively to 6,600 teachers. That's rare. So we built our numbers on about 10%, which were 600 teachers. And so Mike can talk more about that, but I'm pretty okay with that. So thank you for sharing that. I think our principals kind of wanted to chit chat on this, so I'm going to let them talk about it. Hold on for 1 second.
Okay.
Hey, Stephanie, I just have a question for you. Do you think our teachers that are taking this survey, do they understand what blended learning means? And the reason I'm asking, you were scrolling fast, but I thought I saw a response by my school, and we don't have any blended learning going on. So
we had defined blended learning as face-to-face and e-school students at the same time.
Can you say that again, please, Stephanie?
We had defined blended learning as having face-to-face and virtual students at the same time simultaneously. And we had said that in several places in the questions and in the preview before they started the survey.
Okay, thank you.
So the other thing, I noticed you said something about George Jenkins and Ridge, and let me tell you what's going on. We said earlier, if you want to play it back, that this is with our AP courses and with our academies, dual enrollment, and our singleton teachers. And so that has not been a secret. George Jenkins probably overwhelmingly has the most AP courses in the district. That's just the nature of, one, their student population, the community in which they serve, and the students that go there. And I'm not downing any other high schools at all. I'm not downing any other schools, but the nature of the students they serve is quite high. That whole population with the 54, those all are likely very much college-bound students. So if we don't offer those courses, you're affecting scholarships and you're affecting the livelihood of our students. And so I just want to be clear about that. Or those that go to Florida virtual. That's number one. Number two, with regard to Ridge. So I don't know if you know, but Angie Clark was just appointed principal at Ridge. Yes. I think that came through on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Tuesday at the latest. I'm sorry, my days are mixing together. I've been out at schools for the majority of the week. But I say that to say they are still working on their master's schedule. A lot of Ridges, based on what I remember, the majority of the students at Ridge are going e-learning. I think they have 1,300 students or maybe 1,400 students.
Kevin said
that are e-learning.
Today.
It's a large number of students that are e-learning. So they were able to offer, can you do this sound? They were able to offer more pure classes than other schools were. And those classes were pure in terms of them being only e-learning or face-to-face. But I think what we're doing, if we take this option off the table altogether, particularly with our any of our secondary programs, we are severely limiting what we can offer our students and what we can provide our students. And that puts them at a severe disadvantage because our colleges are back in. And we know that in Polk, we don't necessarily have a super high matriculation rate to college. And that's counted in their graduation rate. So we need every incentive that we can to make sure that our students are successful in not only college, but also their CTE programs, so that when they graduate, they can go ahead and start in the workforce.
And that's why we're willing to work with you on the blended learning model. And so that it initially was a hard no for us. But after talking with Michelle a little bit further, with our team and really wrapping our heads around it, we're willing to talk with you about that, but we need parameters in place. And this is going to be extra work for them. And so we do feel that they are going to need some extra compensation here. And so, Laura, you can start sharing your screen again if you want to put up the language for number 6 so that we can see that together. Okay, thank you. All right. So what we wanted to propose after talking about the stipends is dropping it down so that if we are doing this for the whole year, that it's not a detrimental piece of money. We had requested an itemized list of what had been spent so far that would be charged to the CARES Act money. And it does line up with what Mike had presented to the board, about $18 million. So we have about $7 million left of that CARES Act money that should be put in place for things like the PPE and the hand sanitizer and the plexiglass that you guys have already purchased with that. But it should also go to creating stipends or supplements for staff, and not just teachers, because paras and our secretary clericals are going to be doing more work too. You know, we need to be looking at how to compensate them so that we can keep class sizes down and that they are getting compensated for extra work. And so instead of the $671 per quarter, we ran the numbers, and based on the survey numbers.
$761 per quarter?
Sorry. Yeah, I always say 671. I get it mixed up all the time. So instead of the 761, we ran numbers that if we offered $400 per quarter for one class period, and then an additional $100 per class, based on the survey numbers that we did, 68 people would get $400 a quarter, which is $27,200 for the 9 weeks. 77 people that are teaching 2 classes would get $500, and that's $38,500. 55 are, based on again, this is all based on the survey, are teaching 3 classes of blended learning, so they get $600, $33,000. 58 people said they're teaching 4 classes of blended learning, so they get $700, which is $40,000. 52 people say that they are teaching 5 periods of blended learning, which is $800 based on this model, which is $41,600. 186 teachers are saying they're teaching 6 classes or 6 time blocks of blended learning, which is $900, which is $167,400. And that totals up to $347,700 per quarter. It would be $695,400 per semester. And if we were to go the full year with this, it would be $1.39 million out of the $7 million that we have left for CARES Act money. And we think that this would be a good use of that money to compensate our teachers that are doing the extra work to make student offerings a reality.
So I think Perone is on. Perone, can you respond?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, Mike.
How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. So the list of that was shared with you from Heather.
Mm-hmm.
We have not put any label on any expense. So right now, everything that we spent was out of general fund. We've set up an account where we're accounting for all this because I'm trying to save 100% of the CARES Act for what is inevitably coming. And I don't know if you have any idea of the revenue loss in the state of Florida and what is going to happen either in November after the election or to start next year. I was just on a meeting with finance officers and Joy Frank, and she said, I would save every penny of that money you can, or you're going to be laying off more people than you have any idea, either mid-year or next year. So my message to the board was save as much money, if not all of it. But that's one piece. The second is any money that we're going to spend has to be approved, in my opinion, by the board. And so I don't know if in an MOU we can even agree to put funding in there because I don't have the authority to do that.
Well, so I guess with other MOUs for like extra title money or extra bonus money, I mean, when we talk about those type of MOUs, don't those come before the board in the similar fashion, or is it because it's specialty money? Help me out with that.
Yeah, well, it's specialty and it's written into the grant. We didn't write this into the CARES grant. I did not. That would be a total shift from what was written in the grant. We were very vague with the grant. You could always go back and amend, but that was not written in. And it was not written in for the purpose of, I'm just trying to, and I know this isn't popular with people, but I'm trying to save as much money as humanly possible to maintain our staffing levels. And that is in there as an assurance. And so that has been my message, and it will continue to be my message. So while I can't make the decision on an amount or whether it's yes, we can or no, we can't, I am just going to continue to tell the board I would not recommend that. That's all and that's my stance on it. In terms of getting it in front of the board or recommending it and seeing what they say, I don't know how that process would work. But I don't believe we can make that determination just ourselves right here in this setting.
Well, I think I'm going to push back a little bit because when we're in regular contract negotiations, I mean, we know what money is on the table, and then we come to an agreement, and then it becomes before the board. And so why would this be treated any differently?
When we come to you with money, I have never put money on the table without authorization from the board to put it there. I can't do that. Tedra and I go into executive session and say, how much money do you want us to start with? And they'll say $8 million. And then we come back and we propose 600, 900, and 600. And then you will come back and ask for something else. And I say, I don't have the authority. We got to go back to the board. I have not gotten any authority. We haven't had an executive session. So that's where we are.
This is Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can.
So are you saying that you don't have the authority to negotiate over money in this MOU?
That's my opinion. Yes, because we can talk about it, but I can't say yes that $3,000 or $600 per quarter or whatever per course. Something has to be brought back and then approved.
So it is my understanding that bargaining, you're supposed to be able to have these types of conversations about money, regardless of what you're bargaining over, MOU, contract. You're supposed to have people at the table who have the authority to make decisions. I understand what you're saying, that you have to be able to go to the board and get approval for money and funds like that. But you also, if we're bringing something up in this MOU that costs money, I think we need to be able to discuss it. Or that could cause an issue.
Let me make that clear. We can talk about money and you could put a proposal on. It's fine.
But you're not prepared to retort with your proposal on our proposal because you have to bring that to the board before you can negotiate the money.
That's how I would, if you put something on the table, we need to, this to me is salary. We need to go and quite frankly, I would think it would be all together with negotiating the total benefit package for the year.
Well, but we're doing this thing
well, we're doing it in chunks. I get the timing of it all, but we're going to talk about this and then that's all done. And let's say something happens and it's done. Then we go and start talking about salaries and it's thrown, well, we gave those teachers, some teachers money and now you're saying we can't for others. So I think it's a package deal. That's just how I would negotiate it. But
I mean, this wouldn't be like an extra, we wouldn't be adding a supplement to Appendix C or anything like that, because hopefully we're not in this COVID situation for longer than we need to be. This is emergency money for exactly what the CARES Act money was meant for. And I guess that's where I'm getting, and I think our team's getting stuck, is that we have CARES Act money. And while I understand trying to be fiscally conservative right now with that money, because our legislature they're going to defund us at every turn because they hate public education. That's my opinion. But CARES Act money was meant to help in these situations, not just to buy PPE, but to make instruction work in a COVID time right now. And so I guess that's where we're getting hung up, is that we have this money for CARES Act that should be put towards PPE and plexiglass and hand sanitizer and supplies, which it sounds like it is, but then it should also be put towards making schools safe, as far as maybe giving stipends and supplements to people if they need to split classes or come in a little bit earlier or later outside of their contract time, or keep the offerings for our AP classes and these specialty electives and specialty offerings so that they're compensated somehow. And I guess that's where we're getting hung up.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I would disagree that CARES was intended for stipends. I would just.
Well, and not just stipends. What I'm talking about is it's not just let's up all of our stipends 10%. Like, that's not what that was for. CARES Act money specifically was to help us continue teaching and educating kids in a COVID environment. And part of this is a blended learning model, as it appears to be. And so you're asking people to do way more work than what they get paid for normally, because we are in this COVID era of instruction. And that is the intention of CARES Act, was to help alleviate not just physical PPE and barriers and whatnot, but to help with social distancing, to reduce class size, which takes staff and facilities, to do these innovative learning models so that we can keep numbers in classes down while still providing quality instruction. But that takes extra work. And so I would disagree that this isn't just a regular stipend. This is very COVID specific.
Okay.
And so what would the process be? Do we send over this model, and do you take it to executive session with the board? Walk me through that.
I'm not 100% sure. I would assume that's you're going to put a proposal on and we're going to bring it back. I don't believe after when you've done MOUs in the past, Tedra helped me on this. I know the superintendent has to sign.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's something that's brought to the board after the fact that she was given the authority to do that.
That's correct. Mrs. Byrd has the authority to sign an MOU.
And most of the ones in the past were different funding sources, and those types of expenses were
So for like TISA and UNICEF,
were allowable. You know what we can do is, the first thing we can do is ask our federal team to make a contact to the state and see if that would be an allowable expense, and then it goes to the superintendent to see whether she wants to approve it or not.
So for like TISA and UNICEF, like you said earlier, those are built into the grant. Essentially, we have worked specifically like this summer. We worked really, really hard this summer to provide stipends to teachers at these schools. And so we were trying to figure out how to do it. And so ultimately, we were not quite able to do it like we did or like we have done in previous years. But because that was already approved by non-general fund money, Mrs. Byrd could go ahead or the superintendent could go ahead and sign the MOU based on the fact that we received the allocation and it was non-general fund money. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And so, but CARES Act is not technically general fund money, right? I mean, it has stipulations, like a categorical tied to it.
But we can't roll TISA over into general fund, nor can we roll UNICEF money into general fund.
Yeah. I was asking
comparatively, we can roll, we can roll the CARES Act money into general fund. Can't we, Mike?
The CARES Act has to be spent by August of next year.
So, yes and no. The CARES Act, I tried putting all the money into positions and maintaining positions so that at the end of the year, we would just charge, all during the year, we would charge current salary, let's say 2 or 3 teachers at each school, we would cover them under the CARES Act so that our general fund balance would be large enough to handle the hit we're going to take. That was rejected because they said right now you're not showing that you can't afford your current staff level. And I get it. I don't agree with it because the federal government said that you can use this to maintain your current staffing levels. The state of Florida finance people are overriding the federal government. I think that will be overturned in November or at the end of the year. And as Ted just said, they will allow us to move those expenses that I wanted to do originally. And that 25 million could be in the general fund. That is what has been my push and my goal to do, because I'm confident we're going to have a huge hit. Now, the board and the superintendent may disagree. So if a proposal you want to make a proposal, they ultimately get it and sign it and, either agree to it or not. I don't, I think there's been times where you have all brought MOUs, finalized them, brought them to the superintendent, and she's made some changes at the end. Has that not happened?
Not since I've been in this seat.
It might not even be
Not
Superintendent Byrd.
recently, Mike. It's just been small things, but not necessarily recently.
But that can't happen. So again,
We have in the past agreed to money, and then Tedra has, after we signed, Tedra has come back and said, we found more money, or we found we did this or we did that, and we might be able to offer more money. And we've gone back and renegotiated and re-signed MOUs because of money that was found through good Lord, I can't say the
Unisig, that was Unisig and like district TISA money.
Exactly.
Kathleen Schools of Hope was another one.
But we have never just gone back, and the superintendent has never just come back and said wholesale, we've agreed to something and signed off, and she said no.
And if that happens, just for the record, it's not necessarily Mrs. Bird that disagrees. It's usually the state. So like last year when Stephanie and I had to do the show around the district with those schools, it was because the state rejected the MOU that said originally teachers could get bonus money based on their district assessment. So the state didn't agree with that. So therefore we had to change that and then go with the STAR model. So generally, yes, Marianne is correct in that the superintendent will pretty much sign it and has the authority to sign it as long as we've secured the funds. And those funds are generally grant funds. So that's it.
So beyond the money, beyond the stipend, does your team have any suggestions on how to help or recognize teachers that are going above and beyond with this blended learning, and how we could maybe compensate them without looking at money? I mean, we're not taking money off the table, just to be clear. And if Mike, if you want it to come once we get the reopening MOU settled, I mean, we're going right into salary proposals after this is hammered out and signed. I would even be okay with moving this piece into a salary proposal if you would feel more comfortable that way, so that it's not off the table, but just in a separate issue or a separate agreement or proposal. I'm okay with that. And I think our team's okay with it. Just being clear that we're not scratching it, we're just moving it to another discussion.
I think that would be the best way to go. Because we have to settle the 20%. We have to settle this, and overall we have other, no offense, but we have other unions to deal with. So
I understand.
So, and the health and all that. So health insurance, benefit package, all of it. So I think the whole thing should be moved to that discussion.
Okay. So with the other pieces of the blended learning, sections with class sizes for blended learning. And then what I did was I took in letter D, what we agreed to at the table for pre-planning. I think we should just insert that language, Laura, that teachers in predominantly blended learning schedule will collaborate with their evaluator to create an observation schedule that is mutually agreeable to both parties within the established evaluation timelines. So that's letter D. And that's what language we agreed to for pre-planning on Monday that should just carry over. So with
okay, and then with the class sizes, we were just saying school averages, correct?
Well, so with blended learning, because there is that added workload with having kids face-to-face and having to monitor and instruct e-school learners as well, we wanted to be a little bit more strict with class sizes in these blended learning models, because that is one way that you can help compensate teachers by capping their classes with these blended learning models that, you know, doesn't come out of the general fund necessarily. And so we thought that we should be a little bit more strict in capping these blended learning classes so that teachers are not overwhelmed with 20 face-to-face and then another 20 in e-school. That's crazy.
Hey, Stephanie, this is Ty real quick.
Hey,
So we
Ty.
have many teachers at Auburndale that are requesting blended learning models because they know that'll lessen the amount of kids they have face to face. So what happens is we did have some e-classes during the middle of the day, but then they said, hey, I would rather have less kids face to face. So can you make my classes blended? And I'll be willing to teach 6 periods of blended classes or 5 periods of blended classes because I know that's going to lessen the amount of students that I have face to face. So I think if we could go with like class size average on that instead of a strict 25, because teachers they're wanting their in-person classes a lot smaller. Those e-learning classes we already set at a certain number. And so then after that, we're having to go back and try to move kids' schedules around and everything else just to fix it. But they're going to have more than 25 because that's one of their choices, because they know that allows them some mobility in classes, that they can have those smaller numbers, and then also adding some extra sections in there as well to keep those students in their programs.
So what happens when things are fluid and let's say all their eSchool students want to come back face to face? Instead of changing schedules, is that teacher going to have 35 or 40 kids in their physical class now?
Well,
or is that going to be balanced out?
Come back, convert back, we will. Some of those teachers, some of those blended classes would convert just back to on campus, and we would have to restructure throughout different periods of where the students are at for that purpose. Even if we go with our regular e-learning classes of, let's say, 30 to 35, when they come back on campus, we're obviously not going to put 35 kids in a classroom, let's say for keyboarding. We're not going to put 35 kids in keyboard. We can't do that. So we would have to move some classes around, as it's going to be fluid. The schedules are going to change constantly as kids come around with it. But we still are trying to offer the classes that we can offer to our students, and teachers want it. Teachers are asking us every day. I had an art teacher today, hey, I'll teach more blended classes if that means my numbers in face-to-face go down. They do not have a problem with that part.
And I think, Stephanie, going back to the averages gives us that flexibility in some of what Ty is saying. And that has been a byproduct of some of the blended courses increasing, is that we are finding that teachers and administrators are working together, and sometimes that collaboration does in certain situations allow for that face-to-face to be smaller. And I think, as the situation changes, I think going by that class size, the local school class size average gives us a little bit more flexibility for accommodating those types of things.
Okay, we can agree to that. So that we'll use the school averages just like in the eSchool classes for blended learning. And so I do have a question with the blended learning though. And we're going to move the stipend or supplement, whatever you want to call it, to our salary proposal after we get this hammered out for reopening. But with money aside, what do you see that you could give teachers for this extra right now? I mean, can you give them, no duty time during the morning? Can you give them stuff that doesn't cost you any money?
Well, one of the things, Stephanie, that, we've kind of talked about before and want to look at again, and maybe look at it in kind of a cautious manner as we approach hurricane season, is potentially looking at that calendar. And towards the end of the year, if we don't need those minutes, we're safe through hurricane days. We know that's coming at the end, but that may be a way to give our teachers back some more time, since we weren't able to kind of get some of our Schoology platforms and trainings, done more on the front side to at least honor that time, that effort. Again, safely getting us through hurricane season. We don't want to kind of give away everything and then have to, take it away or something of that nature if, we had to experience a storm. But I think that is something that we're prepared to talk about a little later to help honor all the extra and hard work that's happened for everybody throughout this year.
Okay. Kevin, do you still have your hand up, or is that from earlier?
Sorry, that's from earlier.
Okay.
I have a question, Stephanie.
Go ahead.
You said
Yes,
talking
ma'am.
to Mike that you're going to submit your salary proposal. So when can we expect that?
So we wanted to get reopening signed and agreed to, and then we will be doing that in short order after we get through this. So we have our teacher proposal ready. We are finishing up our ESPN paraeducator one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So what was your question?
No, so giving time back on the end is a possibility. I mean, so could blended teachers not do morning or afternoon duty? I mean, to give them some time back. I don't know if it's feasible to give them an extra planning period, even though I would love to talk about that. But I know that master schedules are already set, but we can work out morning and afternoon duty to where those blended learning teachers get some extra time back, because this is going to be insurmountable work for them, even if they're volunteering to do it. And I have heard from teachers that, you know, band teachers and PE teachers, you know, that they just think it might be overall better for everybody, which I get that. But that doesn't discount the extra work that they're still going to experience with having to juggle both face-to-face and e-school kids simultaneously.
I get that, Stephanie, and I honor that. And I think that we're all on that learning curve, you know, just as we're having to acclimate to, you know, having trainings and meetings where sometimes you have people in the room and sometimes you have people, you know, online. It is going to be challenging and it's going to be different, but it's something that we're all experiencing. And even our teachers that are face-to-face, they're still having to implement Schoology and practice with it and help their help their students learn how to use it as well, in the event, you know, that they might have to close a classroom or something of that nature. So I'm again, and we also know that the duties with fewer people potentially on campus, I just don't know that is safe to say at this point in time. I hear you, I get it, and I think that's, you know, we are trying to think of ways. We know that the budget is incredibly tight. We know that what we are preparing and bracing ourselves for. We know in other districts where they have decided to offer fewer courses or things, they've cut teachers, entire programs or entire offerings throughout the entire district. And so we're trying to avoid that, and really trying to think creatively, but also know that we've got to get our instructional pieces accomplished, but we also have to keep kids safe, and we're going to have fewer hands on campus. So I'm not so sure, what that might look like. It would vary from school to school, and maybe some of our principals could share a little bit about that, but they're going to, in many cases, have fewer people on duty, but yet not necessarily have fewer geographical places or points of entry to still observe and monitor children.
Okay, so I guess with eSchool and blended learning, to wrap up, our team is going to revisit C through J on the eSchool and look at paralleling it to the ICP. So we're not accepting your rejection, I guess is the way to say, and we're going to come back to that. But it sounds like we are in agreement for the class size for blended learning to move it to school averages like we had discussed with eSchool. And I saw Laura add in the pre-planning MOU language about the observation schedule. to replace D. So we can get rid of D and add that in. And we have E there because we had a lot in the campus learning. And so we would want all of those provisions to also apply to blended learning. But we will parallel that with the ICP to make sure that we don't miss anything that impacts working conditions. And if it does impact working conditions, it should be in an MOU. And we will move the stipend proposal to our salary proposal. Go ahead, Michelle. Sorry.
I was just going to mention one thing when you guys are reviewing the ICP, and just to make sure that we're keeping everything tightly aligned with the assurances we had to sign for the state, that if something in the ICP, like I believe it's all of section 2, is all board policy, that we don't just say it's in the ICP, but that we also, like, especially the pieces about grading and attendance, that it's board policy. So what's happening in brick and mortar is also exactly what's happening in eSchool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. So let's go back to the beginning and see if we can get through as much of this as possible today. So I think we were in agreement with all the whereases and the now therefores. I did add in from the August 10th discussion, the whereas that this agreement covers all bargaining employees. No language in this memorandum of understanding will serve as an employee waiver for PCPS liability if an employee should contract COVID-19 in their workplace. And so from my notes, you guys were okay with that since you were doing it anyway. So I think we're good with page 1. So moving to the safety protocols, we had agreed to take your language for 1, so it's there. And number 2, we had stricken through the things that were pertaining to the AFSCME unit. And so, but we kept the last sentence according to my notes and Laura's notes. So I have that added in there. And then number 3, that any changes to the calendar and or workday will be negotiated with us. If there's any waivers or anything like that, we will come back to the table to look at the calendar, just probably like we would, but making it clear. And then, so moving to number 4, remote work assignments. Do you have any questions or discussions about number 4? Are we in agreement?
Give us just a second, Steph.
Okay.
Stephanie,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can we skip over to number 5 just for a second
Yeah,
and then come back to number 4?
absolutely.
And on number 5, I think we're good. I want to double check that the alcohol was 60%. I actually think what we bought was higher, but I guess that's okay with at least 60%. It is higher, but I don't, 60 is the minimum, so I guess that's okay, but I know we did.
And I know Tedra was checking on with Angela Usher about the deep cleaning, so I had a note there.
Yeah, we need to make sure that was it. And I know she is changing the air filters more frequently. So I know that's been taken care of.
So are we tentatively okay with A then?
I think with that, with just following up on the double checking on the 60% and the 2 weeks with Angela. Stephanie, on A, where you have the physical barriers.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that one?
Well, I think
the one where we were talking about in the offices.
Yes, and so I had a note on my original that Tedra was going to talk to Angela about that too. But offices, and then even on Monday, there may be opportunities for them to talk to their principals if they need physical barriers, depending on their class arrangement situation, that those would be provided.
When you get over 6C, there's a piece highlighted about physical barriers.
We may need to be a little more specific on that one.
Okay, so what would you suggest?
There must be proper. On A, under the physical barriers. Just quote that piece at all times when we know that piece is already, it's already secured in every front office.
So I think with, hold on. Laura, did you skip? Wait.
It's down in C also.
So 6C is specifically talking about like our center schools or self-contained rooms or so those specialty areas where they might need physical barriers in place because they're diapering or they're dealing with trachs maybe specifically. So this was a separate section in personal protective equipment specifically for pre-K, VPK, ESE that provide those services. So that was a separate type of barrier, not just your typical, I need a barrier between kids because there aren't enough desks and I have tables kind of thing. And so Tedra had said she was going to talk to Angela about that as well. So I made that note.
But Stephanie, this is Kimberly.
Hey.
Sorry. What I'm trying to understand when we talk about physical barriers at the center schools and places like that, what are we looking at additionally beyond what we already typically provide in those types of settings anyways for those types of services. I mean, I need an example. Now, I will say this, we have ordered some, or we're literally in the process, like right this minute, of ordering some desk shields for our speech language pathologists, the clear kind that stand up. So when they're providing the one-on-one services with the kids, they'll have them, especially for that service. But I don't understand in this piece on 6C what you're talking about. I need like specificity.
So I'm going to defer to Marianne and DJ to elaborate on that. So Marianne or DJ, you can unmute, pipe in.
So I think we talked about this in the past, and we said, I think Kimberly, Kim, you said that you were looking at special equipment for some of our profound teachers, the types of mask gowns. For example, I think Tedra brought forward the gowns after we talked about it at, I think 2 meetings ago, to understand that, you know, when you're feeding kids and they're coughing, you end up with food on your clothes. So I think those are the kinds of things we were talking about in terms of some of our profound classrooms, you know, enough masks and face shields because of that's what we were talking about and had brought prior to this meeting for some of the ESC.
Okay, thank you.
We have a lot of extra stuff already into the summer schools and a whole bunch of gowns that literally arrived today. I just got the alert. So I think some of that is already in the project. I guess I don't know if it's going to be anything beyond what's already there. I mean, even medical gowns are on their way there. Then I'll just need to know what that is.
Okay. If I
And
could,
I think when we're doing hand over hand and working with students one-on-one who will have more difficulty than maybe the average student with masks and drooling and whatnot, I think that was the question of whether the students that are in school, the teacher or support people there would actually have the potential of having a physical barrier.
may I, Stephanie?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Marianne, may I jump in? Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at some of the notes from the other day, and we had agreed on this without the language of the physical barriers. I think we definitely all are going to do everything in our power to make sure that all of our teachers are equipped, and especially in these special circumstances. So we had agreed to the face coverings, shields, medical gown, and additional, you know, requiring additional alternative personnel, the PPE upon request. But we did not at that time talk specifically, or I don't recall anything about the physical barriers for those specific items.
And that's why I left it unhighlighted except for that, because on my notes, Tedra had said that she was going to talk to Angela Usher about a few things. Okay. And so that's why I had highlighted it to kind of put that in my brain to bring it back for conversation. So we did agree to everything that, or at least according to my notes, that things that aren't highlighted. And so I had that highlighted under ours with the notation for Tedra to talk to Angela, or that she said she was. And so Tedra, did you hear anything from Angela on several of those points to bring back?
Tedra, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've got 1 point for her that was just shared. So where the language in 5A says deep cleaning will take place when there is a confirmed case, that is the correct verbiage from facilities, the deep cleaning, but that they prefer that there's new daily cleaning processes that take place that they have to follow based on their new guidelines, as opposed to the deep cleaning will also take place every 2 weeks. That phrase deep cleaning in their facilities nomenclature is only used now when it's a confirmed case.
Okay.
So that was some feedback from Angela and Doug
Okay.
on that
So
piece.
could we
So may
reference
be
their,
able to,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
could we
we may-
reference their document then? So that cleaning will
yeah,
take
I think-
place for facilities?
Yeah, we can see what we can do there with that
Okay.
piece, because I think it was already on
Okay.
another piece.
We're okay with that. If they have certain ways that custodial services is looking at things, I think if we can reference that document
Okay.
in there, we're amiable to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So that one, you got that, Laura? That one sentence in 5A?
This is DJ, and I'm going to, as a physical therapist, just want to speak to what Mary Ann already talked about with our center schools, our ESC separate classes, whatever, that we have been given, OTs, PTs have picked up, I went and picked them up, and they're going to be distributed to the therapists, but I know that Audrey Kelly has no more orders in for gowns, but we were first told that we would need to change completely between students, and that at the center school too, which I don't think is really feasible, because sometimes you have to react quickly to the students that have medical conditions. And again, Mary Ann can speak about that more readily than I can, but we're given gowns and one shield and face masks, 20, I think. And, we may see 10 kids in a day or 15 kids in a day. And also, we were told that we would need to get our gloves from the schools. So I just want to know if that's the case, that the therapists have to go to someone at the school to get gloves when they're working with students, because we're in very close contact with the students. A lot of times, like Mary Ann said, you're hand over hand. As a physical therapist, we are transferring students and holding them close to our bodies. Even as an occupational therapist, they're doing that as well, positioning students, feeding, all the things, that Mary Ann said and above. And we have been given, like I said, one shield, 20 masks, 20 gowns, and I think that's it. So
I know that our principal is trying has gotten a lot of things in. So I do know that they have, so I don't know what the answer for what DJ is asking, in terms of for the folks that maybe itinerate in and out of the school. But I know that Maggie at Karen Siegel has really been working to get everything in place so that when the kids are there, we'll have most of it on campus, or have all of it on campus, hopefully.
okay, and it may be the same at, the other center schools. I've not spoken with the principals, but also I know that we're back ordered on the Paul's wipes. So that's a big concern with the therapists, and when we position students or they use manipulatives, we're going to have like a bag for manipulatives to put in a dirty bag when they're using them, or a pencil, so they can be sanitized. But I'm not sure, like, where do we go to get the disinfectant or the materials that we need to do that daily? Those are questions that I have too about the PPE, but we have been supplied with some things, and that's a daunting task. I realize that. And it's also been suggested that we wear like a medical gown that can be washed every day. But then again, like Mary Ann said, when you're so closely working with students that may have bodily fluids, whatever, just to do their medical conditions, then it's really not feasible to wear a fabric gown, a medical gown, whatever, a lab coat, I guess. So thank you.
And I don't know if the gowns are fabric or not. I haven't seen them, so I don't know the answer to that question.
The ones I picked up from Mark Wilcox for the therapists are the disposable ones. But again, we were told maybe we should save them and put them in some type of a bag to use them with the same student the next time we see that student. So.
Ladies, I can share a little bit of detail with you. First of all the center schools are receiving the disposable gowns and cloth gowns. They have a system set up where the gowns will be replaced and washed per student. Each of the principals can share that process with you when you go there. Ms. Ross, we have literally in the last 2 days been receiving supplies at Gibbons Pre-K Center where our Learning Support Division office is for the itinerant staff. So the senior managers are collecting those and are distributing them to their teams. There is a shortage of gloves because they were all sent out to all the schools. So we're collecting some back for the division and the staff, but we'll have those as well. We also placed an additional order of PPE just for the center schools beyond the district order so that there would be extra supplies at the centers for not only their staff, but also the itinerant staff that go to those sites to work with them. So I think you'll find that when you get to each of those sites, if you don't already have items in hand from your senior managers that have given them to you, you'll be able to get them at the schools themselves.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
Thank you, doctors. Thank you for sharing that.
So are we back to 5 or are we still looking at 6?
I thought we were still on 5.
Okay. I mean, I see 5 up here, but we had jumped back to 6 for the center school. So I just wanted to make sure that where I was.
Okay.
So we're good with 5A then, and we'll reference facilities. Is that online? Is there cleaning procedures online? Or is there a manual that people can see on cleaning procedures?
I'll double check while we're talking here.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the custodians have it.
Okay. So then are we good with B then as well?
Stephanie, we talked about this last time, that last, if supplies are not available and employees purchase supplies with their own money, they shall be fully reimbursed with receipts as submitted. Now, we obviously always would want to reimburse our teachers if they had to pay for something, but we discussed the fact that we are very intentional and have been intentional about providing those supplies for them. So I would rather them work with their principals to get the supplies they need, and not have them feel that they have to go out of their pocket in that situation. So I am concerned about that one.
Well, we're okay with striking that sentence if the rest of the sentences are, if the rest of the language is okay. And then we'll just educate our bargaining unit to make sure that they need to talk with their principal before feeling the need to buy anything out of their pocket.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. And we got the C language, 5C, out of Broward. Broward had very similar language that they had agreed upon in their MOU. And so we've gotten that straight from a signed MOU from Broward, with a few tweaks to make it Polk. And so do you guys have any questions or, thoughts?
Yeah, so that's going to be a hard no for us. If you could send me Broward's language specifically so I could look at it.
Okay.
Employees may refuse to physically report to work without financial penalty under conditions they reasonably believe pose a danger to their health and or safety until such conditions are resolved. That's what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
5C, right?
Yeah.
Am I on the wrong thing? Oh, okay. So
No.
until such health and or safety conditions are resolved, the bargaining unit employee will be given a remote work assignment. Examples include, but are not limited to, unsafe social distancing, lack of appropriate personal protective equipment, lack of appropriate sanitation and or sanitization supplies, potentially high positivity rate on campus. That's going to be a hard no.
So
I think realistically what it's, and I don't know that you're trying to do it, and so I apologize about my tone if it seems as if it's not even that I'm frustrated. I don't know. It just, that whole paragraph allows you, and you being the union, to literally shut down the district if you don't believe that people are socially distanced. And that it just seems innately imbalanced. And I'm kind of
so
perplexed.
what is the mechanism
actually,
then? So what is the
by that.
mechanism then?
And I feel as if, and maybe this goes back to something that was in an earlier paragraph or provisions. Let me find it, that we rejected. I just feel like it's a lot of like gotcha stuff, Stephanie. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I really am not. I think I keep saying this, we've been given, regardless of if you agree or disagree, we're here. Students are arriving on Monday, and we are trying our hardest, literally, to make sure our teachers are happy, that the community is happy, and that our students are getting what they need. And so provisions like this seem as if it's literally trying to work against us. And
well, but
I'm
what
just at a loss.
mechanisms are in place? So I think we need to know from your end, what mechanisms are in place for an employee to say that things are not safe? You know, we have a lot of what ifs right now.
Yeah. So Stephanie, I'm going to jump in here if you don't mind. So the mechanism that is in place, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Go ahead.
This talking through this mask is kind of a unique dynamic. So I think we all have to get to the point where we realize that we're all in this together, and we work through that spirit of always working to do what's in the best interest of all. And I'll go back to principles. In this situation, if a teacher felt that the social distancing wasn't taking place, they need some more protective equipment, some PPE, the sanitation, whatever's going on, I think our principals, I know our principals will take care of that for them, because they're their number one advocate on that campus, for not only for students but for their staff. So I think that's where we start, and then if there's an issue, then we work together to resolve it. And so that's what I would recommend. I think that's the way that should play out.
So are you suggesting that maybe I'm sorry, this is Wilfredo.
Hey, hello, Wilfredo.
Hi, how are you? Just to listen to your comments, would it make sense if perhaps that phrase, that paragraph would encourage or require the employee to first make contact with or reach out to the principal of the unsafe working condition? Because I got to tell you, I sympathize with everyone, and I know principals they're trying their very best. Everyone's going through really tough times, and Kevin can testify to this. We have handled so many phone calls, and we've been able to resolve some of it once we've been able to really kind of connect with the principal. So, because they don't want to hurt anyone, and they don't want to, they themselves, want to make sure that everyone's safe and sound. So would a requirement there, and again, that's my word, requirement, but where the employee will say, first reach out to the principal and say, hey, we got a dangerous situation. There's no mask wearing or what have you. And then if not resolved, then I think the employee may may default to saying, look, this is still going on. By the time the employee gets to that point where this is still going on, by then the principal's been involved, administration's been involved, probably us. But I think that there should be at least some sort of sentence in there that encourages them to go to the principal and at least give them the specific information that they need to resolve the issue before they can say, because the principal may agree. The principal may say, I think it's safer for you to work from home at this point until we can rectify the situation. I may need to bring the district into this. Again, this is as an idea.
Thank you. I think I may have a principal that wants to speak to that.
Hello, Alfredo. This is Kyle Wyndham, Frostproof High School. In regards to the not physically reporting to work, I think that's subjective in regards to that particular individual. I definitely agree with you that you need to definitely work with the administration, whether it is the principal, the AP, or whoever's in charge of those facilities, and work through them in order to make sure that that's happening. But we already have set in the district a protocol that if that person's not doing their particular job, they have a boss somewhere that can be contacted to work through that particular process to make sure it's safe. Because if it's not safe for that person, it's more than likely not safe to everybody else on campus. And that's what principals and administrators are there for, is to make sure everyone is safe, not just the kids, not just the parents, not just the teachers or whoever else. Make sure everyone is able to be there. So I believe I don't know about the physically reporting part. I don't think that should be there. But the part as far as working with administration to make sure that is taken care of, I agree with you on that.
So could we keep the examples and then move? So that would be the first two sentences, what Wilfredo had suggested, that the employee would work with their principal to rectify any unsafe working conditions. So Wilfredo, you said it much better than I just said it, and I couldn't get it down word for word.
Stephanie, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I think that's exactly what we should be doing. We should have that collaboration going on anyway. And I don't know that it's just for the issue that we're dealing with now. That's in everything. There needs to be that open collaboration between administration and teachers, because I want to say that we're in this together, not we're over anybody. Mm-hmm. But we're all working through this particular process to make sure that this happens. And if that's the case, then absolutely that collaboration with just all the colleagues on campus, we get together and we talk about it. You got an open door policy, then hey, let's talk about what's going on and happening. And even meeting that teacher in the classroom or wherever it may be and saying, hey, what can we do to rectify and fix this? And these are the options that we have to get that done. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Wilfredo, how did you word that? Because I really liked the way you worded that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. But I didn't get it all down.
Well, I mean, employees shall report, I'm trying to get a concept here. So employees shall report
unsafe working conditions or dangerous health or safety conditions.
Right, yeah, that part of the sentence you have down there. Employees shall report unsafe.
So employees may report concerns regarding unsafe health or safety conditions.
Yes, health and safety. Yeah.
Or maybe just unsafe health conditions. Unsafe health.
I just got a question about this. Who's declaring it unsafe? Like, what is that? So it's solely up to the teacher to declare. So once I declare, Tedra is at Kyle's school.
No, Tedra,
says, Kyle, This is unsafe.
No, Tedra, I don't think that's not how I envision it. And that's not, I didn't hear Kyle say that either. I think that if the employee reports an unsafe health condition, then to the principal, to the administration one would assume would investigate, look into it. And the principal may say, geez, you're correct, let me rectify it. Or the principal may say, well, no, that actually follows the MOU, that follows the CDC guidelines, that follows the district guidelines. I think we're good. Here's what it actually says, whatever. But the determination would be there.
Would be theirs, the administrators?
Would be the administrators, yeah. Now, the employee is free to dispute that and say, no, I'm telling you that they're not wearing masks.
And then once they dispute it, what does that mean? So then the employee doesn't come to work?
No, we are okay with striking that part. We're trying to wordsmith it to where they still have kind of a procedure in place in reporting unsafe health and safety conditions.
Let me ask you this. How do they report unsafe working conditions now? And how is this different from what we do now?
What they do is I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
No, go ahead, Wilfredo.
What happens now is that they'll call us, so they'll call me, and they'll say this was going on. They're not wearing masks. I try to get as many facts as possible. I'll shoot you and Stephanie and Kevin an email. You'll look into it and you'll resolve it, right? Or disagree with it, whatever the story may be. That's basically what happens, is that if we catch it on the fly, we'll let you know. Or we'll try to resolve it as quickly as we can with the principal. But I'm just giving you a heads up. We're going into the new school year, and they're all going to come back to school the 24th, and just right now we're inundated with calls of folks not wearing masks, of social distancing issues, et cetera, and that's going to quadruple coming into the new school year. So having a soft process here where the principal is at very minimum being told there's an unsafe condition in this school, he or she can investigate, look into it, rectify it, and move on. Now, if there's a disagreement, like anything else, they're free to call us, and we're free to reach out to you, and then we can resolve it at our level. But at least giving them the opportunity at their level to resolve it, in my opinion, makes sense.
So, Wilfredo, I think you described that does occur, and there's many times, multiple times, that it doesn't even reach that level because teachers have gone to their principals. Mm-hmm. And you're right, that principals have resolved the issue. And yes, we all know we're in a different day and time with some of the things we're contending with. But we've always had that open dialogue and that collaborative process where teachers are part of your staff to help maintain the safety. And so when they report those things, our principals will address it. So I think if you say something to the effect that employees are encouraged to report any concerns, unsafe, health conditions to their principals, so principals may. It's kind of getting late in the day for me to try to wordsmith this for the team, but something to the effect of employees are encouraged to report safety concerns to the principals, which will allow their principals to, let's see.
Yeah, I like that, John. Employees are encouraged to report safety concerns to their principal or immediate supervisor for,
no. Something to,
for investigation.
Yeah, for investigation.
For further investigation and
resolution.
Yeah, and resolution. And then I think just some examples, because it's not regular, health, it's not regular safety concerns that we're specifically addressing here. It's safety concerns specific to COVID.
All right, so we'll have.
So if we take rid of the, I think where you have examples bolded, Laura, get rid of everything above that and then just loop that together. Is that,
It'd be easier to go to the COVID coordinator rather than
It's up to y'all. Administrator, and I think they got it.
So we're thinking about just the overall day. So the suggestion that I have is instead of principal, do administrator.
okay,
To one of the campus administrators, because the principal may not be there. There's just a lot going on in their day already. And so I don't want somebody to say, oh yeah, I told my principal, but he didn't do anything about it or she didn't do anything about it. And so at least if you're telling the APs as well, they can investigate it too.
yep, that works.
Thank you, Tedder.
All right. So then that's good with 5 now. So I guess we have that in there for worksite administrator, so that makes it good for all district work sites, even if it's not a school. I think that would cover that. Worksite administrator.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right. So I guess
So
moving
wait.
on to, go ahead, sorry.
Do you need the examples?
I think it doesn't hurt to keep those in there. Because we're looking at safety concerns specific to COVID.
Investigation, she did that.
Oh, right. The intentionally high positive case rate on campus. So one, I'm not even thinking about HIPAA, but 2, and more importantly, you know that we're working with the Polk Health Department on this. And so
We can take that out.
When we shut down a classroom and or a building, that is going to be in collaboration with Polk Health Department. So to have staff say, I guess I'm just unsure. So what are they going to, if that's an example, they're going to report their concern that 10 of the 15 teachers are COVID positive, or 10 teachers are COVID positive on campus. So there's no investigation there. They may say, yes, you're correct. And then what happens there?
I mean, if you have 10 staff members, I mean, is there a number that the Department of Health has given you guys where they would shut down, or are they still waffling on the case-by-case basis?
I would say it's just a case-by-case basis. I don't know that it's waffling, but I would just say it's a case-by-case basis.
So to get past this hump, I mean, we're okay with striking that if that is out of our control at this point. If that would make your side 100% good. Or sorry, when I meant strike through it, I meant the potentially high positivity case rate on campus. I would like to leave the other examples in there, since those are COVID specific.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good with 5? Oh, and sorry, for further investigation and resolution, Laura, to capture John's last part.
All right. Stephanie, we're going to go ahead with your blessing so that we're on the same page to strike the if supplies we haven't bought.
Yes.
Okay.
I had already struck through it on my paper.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so then, so actually just going back to 5A real quick with physical barriers. Did we want to, what was the final say with Kim piping in? I mean, do we want to specify that that's front office, and maybe upon request for teachers that need them in their room configurations, or wait, oh. So not the pre-K ESE in the 5A. Yeah.
One other thing we may need to clarify is there's the disinfectant is in a spray. It's not, so where it says disinfectant wipes, it's a spray. Yeah, you got paper towels further down, but it's, wipes are in high demand, but we have plenty of the spray.
Okay.
So.
All right. We're okay with that.
Okay.
All right. So we're good with 5 now?
Did you talk about that?
Yeah, Laura took care of that. Yep.
Okay. All right. So going on to number 6 then, what I added in, which was what we ended up, I believe, word for word approving in the pre-planning MOU was 6A. And we may want to add in, Laura, onto 6A, because I believe I don't believe it. In the pre-planning MOU, we added and collaborative partners with visitors. So any visitors and collaborative partners must also, and just get rid of to schools. So that was the wording in the pre-planning MOU. Let me get over there. Okay.
Stephanie, I just have a question about 5A.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there must be proper and sufficient supply of face coverings, gloves, disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol, soap, paper towels, tissues, physical barriers. What were you saying earlier about physical barriers in the secretary's area? Is that what you said?
Yes. And so I think Laura had taken it out because we actually addressed it, I think, elsewhere in some of the more specific cases. So we were okay with taking that out here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then so on 6B, Tedra, you were, you said that, and I couldn't remember the exact wording in 6B for the face mask. You said, you guys had said in your proposal disposable, but you actually thought that they were reusable. And so you had a washable. So whatever that piece was, we were okay with. I didn't write it down word for word. So, okay, so we're good with 5B then. Or 6B, sorry. So, and we're good with 6C. So we had that discussion. We jumped over there. So Kim, are they going to have in the center schools? Will they have the physical barriers like DJ was talking about, or are they? Just remind me.
I'm still not sure that I'm totally clear on what physical barriers we're referring to. We have disposable and washable and gowns. They have face shields, they have masks, they have gloves, they have sanitizer, they have, the SLPs will have the desk shields.
Okay, so maybe,
Think of off
This
the
is
top of my head.
DJ. This is
Okay,
DJ.
So
Go
if
ahead,
there's
DJ.
anything in addition to that that I'm not thinking of, I know
No,
we
I
do,
don't-
and DJ was right, we have the pause wipes ordered, but they're on back order. It would be specific for the itinerants.
I don't believe
I
that.
do know that the centers also have some, they have like some specialized bibs for some of the students that do drool and things like that. They're handling those things. So if there's anything else beyond that, I just need clarity.
Okay.
I don't believe that physical barriers would be needed in the very involved physically paired students' classrooms that we're thinking of. I just think, just the social distancing, whatever, but I don't really think there needs to be any kind of physical barriers. I think that the things that Dr. Steinke's described are right in order.
Okay, so we can check that out then.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take out Laura on 6C, the and physical barriers. And Laura, do we want it at the end? Because I see you're changing the mask to face coverings and we're okay with that. Do we want to do like a control find and then do a replace at the end to make sure we caught all of those?
She's got that note. We're doing that everywhere to also try to be consistent with the proposed code of conduct language as well.
Yeah, we're okay with that too. We can make sure we found them all if we missed them. All right, and so we're good with C. So is there any discussion on the rest of number 6? I think we all were in agreement with D, E, and F already. And then when I was going through and cross-referencing, I did not see G addressed and it kind of fit under here. So is there any discussion on your side with this language or are you okay with it?
Stephanie,
Yeah.
on just a point of clarification on D, students in grades K through 12 and staff must wear face coverings at all times. Could we just say all required times? Because there are some, like in physical education, if they're more than 6 feet apart and they're outdoors for an extended amount of time, we do have some written guidance for those specific classes. There's one, even if when after football season starts and band, like they've got some things like they must have their bell cover used to be 6 feet away from the next person, and then they may remove their mask to play. I just think
we're okay with that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're okay with that. And really, because remind me, when the student code of conduct was being talked about with the board a couple weeks ago, I know pre-K is not under the student code of conduct, but were you guys putting in mask requirements into their handbooks? So should we even say pre-K through 12?
I think I would like us to just stick with K through 12 for it to be aligned with the code of conduct. For pre-K, we did purchase the face shields for them, and we do have some small masks where we're going to try to educate them and things, but they also have things just like PE with the outdoor play time, where if they're separated, then they can remove that. So
Okay,
I think if we do that, that'll be good.
okay. So then I think we have agreement on the rest of these from my notes and Laura's notes. So are we, again, any discussion with G?
We don't typically negotiate that for calendar. The board approves the calendar, we negotiate after they dismiss the notice. We don't negotiate.
On G, let me get back to it. I'm just wondering if we need to, if the reference should not be made about students to the code, as I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
You want a reference to student code of conduct?
I'm almost wondering if it becomes more of a student issue or support through the student code of conduct, as opposed to the language about employees shall not be held responsible for, like it, make it more about bargaining unit employees will, uphold or enforce the student code of conduct as a more policy aligned piece. I'm just thinking here. Hold on.
Well, the intent here is that, when you're enforcing, masks or face coverings, just like with IDs, you get into a tiff with a kid, and you haven't done anything wrong. I've seen it turn very quickly to where the parent is suddenly upset that you made him wear an ID, or you sent him to the, dean's office to get another ID, and then they're trying, it becomes a mess. And I'm not saying this happens all the time necessarily, but it does happen. And so we wanted some protections in place that, if we're reasonably enforcing, just like we do with IDs or dress code, that we have protection there.
Yeah, I think the kind of like what you said about dress code and IDs, that if we're following the code, that's our protection, I guess, is kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm just wondering if that's even needed. I mean, I get where, everybody is trying to make sure that the safety practices are in place and the protocols are being followed, but really our support and our policy that, will hopefully be board approved next week comes from the code of conduct. And so that would be our obligation to students, and those due process pieces is to follow the code.
So maybe bargaining unit employees will enforce the student code of conduct and shall not be disciplined for upholding student code of conduct.
When
are they ever disciplined for upholding the student code of conduct?
I mean, we know here that things can get very heated when parents can get involved, and I have seen it
one time when we've disciplined a teacher for upholding the student code of conduct.
Tedra,
9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10. principals support teachers unless they've done something extremely egregious, right? I mean,
So then what's the
that's what leadership
aversion to
is.
having this in here?
I just don't know. It's one of those givens to me. It's a non-issue. I don't want us to make issues when they're not any issues.
Again, I think that, we have language again for the outliers that we do need to have language for. I think that 95% of your principals are top notch, just like we can say probably the same thing for teachers. And, we don't want bad principals. We don't want bad teachers. But the small percentage of them do exist, and laws and contract language are there for those instances. And if it's a non-issue for your side, I don't understand the aversion to having this in here. If it allows people to have some peace of mind that they won't be disciplined for frivolous things.
And I think that let's not forget that this MOU really is going towards the COVID-19 situations we're experiencing, right? So
anxieties are high.
Exactly. So anxiety is high. Folks are trying to make the best decision as possible. And so I like that the sentence, bargaining unit employees will enforce the code of conduct. And I thought that the second half was going to come. And it might be built in already into what Stephanie was saying, which is, if the bargaining unit employee is reasonably enforcing the student code of conduct, but anxieties are high and the principal is just trying to make the best decision as possible, that teacher or that staff person shouldn't be held responsible or disciplined for doing the best that they could. This is really limited to that scope, which is again COVID-19, and the examples in the bottom, face coverings. I'm assuming that's going to be an issue. COVID-19 cases, traces. I mean, the examples are built in there. Excuse me. I see maybe 2 sentences, maybe 3, that we can walk out of here with, which is the bargaining unit employees will enforce the student code of conduct, but shall not be disciplined or held responsible for reasonably enforcement of safety protocols. And then with some example, period. Because again, we already know that 95%, whoever said it, I forget who said it, 95% of principals and teachers cooperate, but we don't know how well that cooperation is going to really, that cooperation will be stressed, put to the test, I should say, for the next 4 or 5 months. So I mean, that's a 2-sentence settlement right there.
So I see Tony's hand up. Tony?
Hi, good afternoon. I guess my only concern is from an employee relations standpoint, I think the expectation would be that all instructional staff or anyone for that matter would uphold the student code of conduct regardless if we were dealing with COVID-19 issues or not. And so to Mrs. Porteous's point, I don't believe that there's ever been an occasion in the 5 years that I have worked in employee relations and human resource services that we've ever disciplined any employee for upholding the code of conduct. And so just from that standpoint alone, I don't know where this language necessarily gives anyone any leverage whatsoever. The expectation is the expectation. Those same concerns, Stephanie, that you're voicing relative to how parents can be, that situation could arise pre-COVID, and it has, and it just gets dealt with at the district level. And so I guess I just need a little bit of explanation, because those disciplines and then any subsequent grievances that result out of those disciplines would come through my office. And so I'm just kind of wanting to try to get some type of additional clarity, because I really don't see where it benefits anyone at this particular time. If you could explain, thanks.
Well, I think where we're coming from with this is that, these are different safety protocols that we're putting in place this year to make face-to-face learning work and be as safe as possible. And we know anxieties are running high. And we felt that this would ease people's minds if it's a non-issue, you know, or from using Tedra's words, if it's a non-issue for your side, and this is something that's in place, I think it gives people just a peace of mind right now that is critical. There's a lot of mental anguish out there about how this looks. And I think if we can give people a little peace, that they're covered by reasonably enforcing these safety protocols, I don't see why we wouldn't want to do that.
Stephanie, if I may, you know, it goes back to, I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. I will put my, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. There's a little feedback. So, you know, I think you brought it up or mentioned it a few minutes ago, and I agree that, and I would say it's even higher than 95%. I'd say, you know, it's in the high 90 percentile that our principals and our teachers are just outstanding. And so I think this kind of language in this discussion, personally, kind of, it just promotes that false narrative that principals, for some reason, are out to get their teachers, and it's just not the case. They're working collaboratively together. We've got a code of conduct. We've always wanted our staff to work together collaboratively to enforce the code of conduct. So I'm a little concerned about, I guess more than being concerned, not only am I concerned, I just don't quite understand, because we're all working together to provide a safe environment for everyone. And obviously, we're going to have to train, coach, and at times discipline students if it's necessary.
Well, and I think I go back to the statement that we don't have laws, you know, in our society, or we don't have, we have contracts because we're not necessarily addressing the people that have common sense or common just good in their heart. You know, we have to address it for folks that don't follow the rules. And so I don't understand why we're getting some pushback. If this will put people's minds at ease, that it just seems kind of like a no-brainer. And I hear you. I understand what you're saying. But again, I'm going to reiterate, anxieties are running high. And if this is one less thing that people have to worry about, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to address it here.
I think for one, and I appreciate you understanding my perspective. So I think, first of all, it's our teachers are protected by the current CBA. If there was a situation that occurred and needed to be addressed, I think our regionals would assist and support and address any of those kind of issues. So I truly believe that the spirit that I've witnessed on the campuses that I've visited is just such a positive spirit between administrators and teachers. Everybody's working together. I guess I'm just perplexed as why it would need to be in the language, because I know we're going to take care of our people, and I know our principals are going to take care of their teachers, and I know our teachers are working. They're amazing. They're remarkable. And so not just our teachers, but all of our employees and our support staff, our school-based personnel. So those are my thoughts. I think we're moving in a very positive direction. I think we're certainly capable of collaborating extremely well together and communicating if there's any situations that arise that need to be addressed.
So with this piece right here, so that we can get to a yes, I mean, would something like bargaining unit employees will enforce the student code of conduct and shall not be disciplined or held responsible for reasonable enforcement and be done with it? Because I think that gets our point across. But, and again, I hear you, but at the same time, if this piece can help alleviate some anxiety about enforcement here, I think it's a no-brainer.
Stephanie, do you mind if I cut in?
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
So my question is, if we just add just this piece of it, why are we not adding the whole code of conduct to it? Why aren't we putting the tardies and everything else? It's already included in the code of conduct. I want all of my, not just my teachers, I want my whole staff enforcing the student code of conduct. That's how we work together on it to make sure students are following exactly what we're supposed to. So if it's something that we're already doing, why would we have to add any more to a document that's already been taken care of in another document that the board already votes on? That's what I was trying to figure out.
I mean, I think that the intent behind this language being proposed from our side was, since we are dealing in this weird COVID craziness and anxieties again, and I can't stress this enough, the mental anguish that people are experiencing right now is very high. And COVID specific protocols we wanted to address here so that people had a little bit of peace of mind. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen. We're addressing COVID specific things, and that's why the whole thing is presented the way it is. So again, to provide people a little bit of peace of mind.
Stephanie, this is Tony here real quickly. I can appreciate the peace of mind aspect of it. When you were crafting this language, was it born out of any concerns that were brought forth to the union relative to concerns about being disciplined for enforcing the code of conduct, something that they are already required to do pre-COVID?
So yes. And again, these are all hypotheticals, right? Because we're not in it. So nobody has been disciplined for not enforcing the student code of conduct for this. But we did hear concerns that they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to be, held responsible for saying, hey, you got to put your face mask on, or it escalating. I mean, just being in a high school position, I've had the ID conversation escalate very quickly. And for whatever reason, that kid had a bad day, whatever. And so, we did hear, I've heard more hypotheticals in the last 3 months from just teachers in general and support staff in general than I think I've heard in my whole life. And because people are really concerned. And so when we looked at this and we had talked about it as a team, we wanted to try to offer as much peace of mind as possible. And again, if this is already happening, then I think it is a non-issue here.
Yeah, I would agree that it was if it's already happening and then it's and if it's a non-issue, then why memorialize it in an MOU if it's already being done?
And again, I think that when I said non-issue, I was using Tedra's phrasing that it was a non-issue for your side since it was already happening. And so I used that phrase from her. But again, I'm going to reiterate this again and again and again. People are anxious. People are scared. And if this piece will help alleviate that, that's why we proposed it.
All right, thank you.
So I think our team is still at the point where we want to remove this language. But more importantly, I won't even say more importantly, but I just think we need to move on. I don't see us agreeing to this language at all. In addition, it's 6:22, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We scheduled these to 6 o'clock. It's already an hour. It's already 22 minutes over. That is an hour past 5 o'clock. The reason why we schedule it to 6 is so we can work through as many issues as we can. But I don't want to encroach upon people's time with their families, particularly our teachers that are on the call, but also our administrators, because we know that this week is just a bit hectic. And so I think we need to go ahead and end this now, and then we can go ahead and reschedule another session for next week or something.
Well, I know my team is willing to stay on later, but if your team needs to get off, we can reschedule another time. I think we need to look at Friday because I think we need to have something in place by Monday. And we're also willing to if we need to do a longer evening session, we can, or even, a Saturday if we need to just get this done. And, and with time, we wanted to meet, at the beginning of August to get this hammered out when most of our people were not working, so that we could try to get this done while they were not on, during their contract, once their contract started. We really feel that this needs to be hammered out before Monday.
So to be frank, I don't think it's going to get hammered out before Monday. I think Friday is asking a lot. Well, let me stop. I think Saturday is asking a lot for anybody. I think that's not a good business practice for us. We all have families. And so I think we got to be respectful of everyone's time. And so that means not only our teachers' time before they go back on Monday with their students, but again, also everybody's time here. So that's where we are. I had not planned on staying beyond 6. This is Tedra personally, because we went ahead and scheduled it to 6. And so let me just say this and state this for the record. Whenever we schedule the meetings and the collective bargaining sessions, I would like it if we ended on time. I think that was the whole thing. That's the whole thing about just being respectful of everybody's time. So if you want to propose some other dates, then that's fine. I know that my team is unavailable. I'm looking at some faces in here, and so they are not available on Friday.
Even in the morning?
So that would be a no.
So looking at next week.
I think Brandon has his hand up, by the way.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate that it is getting later in the evening and we're talking about respect. I also, and this is just me speaking, I don't know if it's real respectful to our teachers, our paras, and our ESPs to keep kicking this can down the road. We have made ourselves really available to meet. We, as a team, we meet on the weekends to get some of this language handed out. I feel like I feel like we're slow playing this personally. It seems as though this is the first time some of your team has seen the language, and that slows things down too. And we are talking about peace of mind. We have compromised a lot on our side. And it seems as though we keep hitting no with the district side. We have people who signed up for brick and mortar classes who are now being told that they're not just brick and mortar teachers, they're virtual teachers at the same time as well. We have parents who have signed up to send their kids back to brick and mortar, and now they're learning that their teachers are going to be split between brick and mortar and campus e-school at the same time. So I think when we're talking about respect, we do need to look at the overall picture of what respect actually means and what it actually looks like. Thank you.
And to Brandon's point, I think that not having an agreement in place is disrespecting the 9,000 people we represent that are coming back to work on Monday.
Thank you. So Wednesday, next Wednesday for everybody? So maybe team members, yeah. Wednesday for us works.
Not Monday?
Sharito, send it.
We cannot meet on Monday?
First day of school, Stephanie. We're all, I mean, all the principals are out. We're out. I don't know that you know this. You talk about working on the weekends. We've been working literally almost every weekend since March. It's just a fact of life for us. So
I have not had a vacation for over a year, Tedra. I completely understand.
Okay.
We wanted to meet at the 1st of August to get this hammered out.
And the emails prove that you were unavailable on some of those dates as well. So let's make sure that we are telling the truth and being accurate in our statements. Okay. Wednesday, Sharitha will send the appointment. 3:30.
We need to meet until this is done then. And just to have it done with.
I'll send you our comments. We cannot stay all night. We all have family obligations. So I'll send you what we have before then, and then we'll go from there.
So we do not want this to go how some of this went today. You have this language, your team has this language. We need to hammer this out on Wednesday.
I'm sorry, and for the record, the team was provided everything well before today. We did review everything well before today. We've just had a lot of conversation because it was a question about the intent, specifically your intent for some of the language. Nonetheless, as I said, I'll send back some comments and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
So that's it for our side.
We'll need duty releases for Wednesday then.
Of course.
All right.
Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
At 6:30.
Bye-bye.
Bye.